Welcome in, everyone. I'll give everyone a few more moments before we start. But thank you for coming in, Darla. Hello, Looney Neptune. Thank you for coming in. Okay, so that should be enough time. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming in today. So, for the month of October, I will let y'all know that I will be streaming every Monday called Mythic Mondays at 5 p.m. CST. I will read you all something. So at this time, it is the Irish Myths book. However, on Tuesdays, I will be playing 2v Tuesdays, or I will be attempting to play a scarier game. So for tomorrow, that will be the game Unforgiving Northern Hymn. Since it is a 3-ish hour game, I will play through the whole thing on stream. So, wish me luck with that. And I will try to keep y'all updated every week for what my schedule will be. And I will also let you know that my VTuber model is finished. So I'm actually thinking that I will debut at the end of the month on Halloween or Samhain with my model. Now, as for what I'll be doing, I'm not 100% sure as of yet, but I do know that I think it would be fun to have that debut on Halloween. Well, that would certainly be interesting, Darla. However, I do not drink, so I can get myself crunk off tea, but I don't drink, I'm afraid. Wine. I am thinking that I will have wine and champagne. Well, maybe y'all could get drunk off of that, and I'll just have my milk. I'm a milk drinker. But I think that I will type out a more properly made version of my lore and also go through slides of different things, including artist appreciation stuff and all that. So maybe it might be a bit akin to my birthday stream or how that was like, with going over the lore but in the more official manner. And then what's next? You sit at the Well, the children certainly can be interesting. But yes, the lore in an official manner after going through slides of information. A Q&A if anyone wants it. I might read y'all something. Oh, maybe I can save my most favored short story for my debut, since I love that one so much. And then I could also play some games, maybe. We'll just have to see. I'm still working on that. Oh yes, I'm interesting. Am I not? Yes, you are, my dear. But with all that out of the way, with the information of Mythic Mondays and Toothy Tuesdays, reminder, 5 p.m. CST, all through October. With all of those little bookkeeping things out of the way, I suppose we should get started on stories for today. Alright, so today we shall begin with the story The Fairy's Revenge by Lady Wilde. The fairies have a great objection to the fairy wraiths, where they meet at night, being built upon by mortal man. A farmer called Johnstone, having plenty of money, bought some land and chose 2 beautiful green spots to build a house on, the very spot the fairies loved best. The neighbors warned him that it was a fairy wrath, but he laughed and never minded, for he was from the north, and looked at such things as mere old wives' tales. So he built the house and made it beautiful to live in. And no people in the country were so well off as the Johnstones. So that the people said the farmer must have found a pot of gold in the fairy rath. But the fairies were all the time plotting how they could punish the farmer for taking away their dancing ground, and for cutting down the hawthorn bush where they held their revels when the moon was full. And one day, when the cows were milking, a little old woman in a blue cloak came to Miss Johnstone and asked her for a porringer of milk. "Go away," said the mistress of the house. "You shall have no milk from me. I'll have no tramps coming about my place." And she told the farm servants to chase her away. Some time after, the best and finest cows sickened and gave no milk, and she lost her horns and her teeth and finally died. Then one day, as Miss Johnstone was sitting spinning flax in the parlor, the same little woman in the blue cloak suddenly stood before her. "Your maids are baking cakes in the kitchen," she said. "Give me some off the griddle to carry away with me." "Go out of this," cried the farmer's wife angrily. "You are a wicked old wretch, and you have poisoned my best cow." And she bade the farm servants drive her off with sticks. Now, the Johnstones had only one child, a beautiful, bright boy, as strong as a young colt, and as full of life and merriment. But soon after this, he began to grow queer and strange, and was disturbed in his sleep, for he said the fairies came around him at night and pinched him and beat him. And some sat on his chest, and he could neither breathe nor move. And they told him they would never leave him in peace until he promised them to give them a supper every night of a griddle cake and a porringer of milk. So, to soothe the child, the mother had these things laid every night on the table beside his bed, and in the morning they were gone. But still the child pined away, and his eyes got a strange, wild look, as if he saw nothing near or around him. Only something far, far away troubled his spirit. And when they asked him what ailed him, he said the fairies carried him away to the hills every night, where he danced and danced with them till the morning, when they brought him back and laid him again in his bed. At last the farmer and his wife were at their wits' end from grief and despair, for the child was pining away before their eyes, and they could do nothing for him to help him. One night he cried out in great agony, "Mother, mother, send for the priest to take away the fairies, for they are killing me. They are here on my chest, crushing me to death." And his eyes were wild in terror. No, the farmer and his wife believed in no fairies, and in no priest. But to soothe the child, they did as he asked, and sent for the priest, who prayed over him and sprinkled him with holy water. The poor little fellow seemed calmer as the priest prayed, and he said the fairies were leaving him and going away. And then he sank into a quiet sleep. But when he woke in the morning, he told his parents that he had a beautiful dream and was walking in a lovely garden with the angels, and he knew it was heaven, and that he would be there before the night. For the angels told him they would come for him. Then they watched by the sick child all through the night, for they saw the fever was still on him, but hoped a change would come before morning, for now he slept quite calmly with a smile on his lips. But just as the clock struck midnight, he awoke and sat up, and when his mother put her arms round him weeping, he whispered to her, "The angels are here, mother." And then he sank back and so died. Now, after this calamity, the farmer never held his head up. He ceased to mind his farm and the crops went to ruin, and the cattle died. And finally, before the year and a day were over, he was laid in the grave by the side of his little son, and the lands passed into other hands, and as no one would live in the house, it was pulled down. No one ever would plant on the rath, so the grass grew again all over it, green and beautiful, and the fairies danced there once more in the moonlight, as they used to do in the old time, free and happy. And thus the evil spell was broken forevermore. But the people would have nothing to do with the childless mother, so she went away back to her old people, a broken-hearted, miserable woman, a warning to all who would arouse the vengeance of the fairies by interfering with their ancient rights and possessions and privileges. Poor little one. But I suppose if one were to punish a parent, that would be one of the easiest ways to do so. No. Give me one moment for a hydration break. Now, this next story is in fact seems to be a song called Cushin Lu. It was translated from the Irish by J.J. Callahan. This song is supposed to have been sung by a young bride who was forcibly detained in one of those forts which are so common in Ireland, and to which the good people are very fond of resorting. Under pretense of hushing her child to rest, she retired to the outside margin of the fort and addressed the burthen of her song to a young woman whom she saw at a short distance, and whom she requested to inform her husband of her condition, and to desire him to bring the steel knife to dissolve the enchantment. Well, congratulations, my dear. It seems I have a small little song to sing to you. Weep, my child, for the rustling trees, stirred by the breath of the summer breeze, and fairy songs of sweetest note around us gently float. Sleep, for the weeping flowers have shed their fragrant tears upon thy head. The voice of love hath soothed thy rest, and thy pillow is a mother's breast. Sleep, my child, weary hath passed the time forlorn, since to your mansion I was born. Though bright the feast of its airy halls, and the voice of mirth resounds from its walls, sleep, my child. Full many a maid and blossoming bride within that splendid dome abide, and many a hoar and shriveled sage, and many a matron bowed with age. Sleep, my child. Oh, thou who hearest this song of fear, to the mourner's home these tidings bear. Bid him bring the knife of the magic blade, at whose lightning flash the charm shall fade. Sleep, my child. Haste, for tomorrow's sun will see this hateful spell renewed for me. Nor can I from that home depart, till life shall leave my withering heart. Sleep, my child. Sleep, my child, for the rustling trees, stirred by the breath of summer breeze, and fairy song of sweetest note around us gently float. A fun little diddly. Now, this next story is called The Legend of Nocfurna by T. Crofton Croker. It is a very good thing not to be in any way in dread of the fairies, for without doubt they have then less power over a person. But to make too free with them, or disbelieve in them altogether, is as foolish a thing a man, woman, or child can do. It has been truly said that good manners are no burden, and that civility costs nothing. But there are some people foolhardy enough to disregard doing a civil thing, which, whatever they may think, can never harm themselves or anyone else, and who at the same time will go out of their way for a bit of mischief, which never can serve them. But sooner or later they will come to know better, as you shall hear of Carol O'Daly, a strapping young fellow up out of Connaught, who they used to call in his own country Devil Dally. Carol O'Daly used to go roving about from one place to another, and the fear of nothing stopped him. He would as soon pass an old churchyard or regular fairy ground at any hour of the night, as go from one room into another, without ever making the sign of the cross, or saying, "Good luck attend you, gentlemen." It so happened that he was once journeying in the country of Limerick toward the Baalbek of Ireland, the vulnerable town of Killimach, and just at the foot of Knockfiona he overtook a respectable looking man jogging along upon a white pony. The night was coming on, and they rode side by side for some time, without much conversation passing between them, further than saluting each other very kindly. At last, Carol O'Daly asked his companion how far he was going. "Not far your way," said the farmer, for such his appearance bespoke him. "I'm only going to the top of this hill here." "And what might take you there?" said O'Daly, "at this time of the night?" "Why then," replied the farmer, "if you want to know, 'tis the good people." "The fairies, you mean?" said O'Daly. "Whist, whist," said his fellow traveler, "or you may be sorry for it." And he turned his pony off the road they were going towards a little path, and led up the side of the mountain, wishing Carol O'Daly good night and a safe journey. "That fellow," thought Carol, "is about no good this blessed night, and I would have no fear of swearing wrong if I took my Bible oath that it is something else beside the fairies, or the good people as he calls them, that is taking him up the mountain at this hour. The fairies," he repeated. "Is it for a well-shaped man like him to be going up after little chaps like the fairies? To be sure, they say there are such things, and more say not. But I know this, that never afraid would I be of a dozen of 'em, 2 dozen, for that matter, if they are no bigger than what I hear tell of." Carol O'Daly, whilst these thoughts were passing in his mind, had fixed his eyes steadfastly on the mountain, behind which the full moon was rising majestically. Upon an elevated point that appeared darkly against the moon's disk, he beheld the figure of the man leading a pony, and he had no doubt it was that of the farmer with whom he had just parted company. A sudden resolve to follow flashed across the mind of O'Daly. With the speed of lightning, both his courage and curiosity had been worked up by his cognations to the pitch of chivalry, and muttering, "Here's after you, old boy," he dismounted from his horse, bound him to an old thorn tree, and then commenced vigorously ascending the mountain. "Ah, thank you for the lurk, Game Crazy," Following as well as he could in the direction taken by the figures of the man and pony, he pursued his way, occasionally guided by their partial appearance, and after toiling nearly 3 hours over the rugged and sometimes swampy path, came to a green spot at the top of the mountain, where he saw the white pony at full liberty, grazing as quietly as it may be. O'Daly looked around for the rider, but he was nowhere to be seen. He, however, soon discovered, close to where the pony stood, an opening in the mountain like the mouth of a pit, and he remembered hearing, when a child, many a tale about Paldove, or Black Hole of Knockfierna, how it was the entrance to the fairy castle, which was within the mountain, and how a man whose name was Athern, a land surveyor in that part of the country, had once attempted to fathom it with a line, and had been drawn into it and was never heard of again. As with many other tales of like in nature. But, thought O'Daly, these are old women's stories, and since I've come up so far, I'll just knock at the castle door and see if the fairies are at home. No sooner said than done, for seizing a large stone as big, aye, bigger than his 2 hands, he flung it with all his strength down into Paldove of Knockfierna. He heard it bounding and tumbling about from one rock to another with a terrible noise, and he leant his head over to try and hear if it would reach the bottom, when what should be the very stone he had thrown in do but come up again with as much force as it had gone down, and gave him such a blow full in the face that it sent him rolling down the side of Knockfierna, head over heels, tumbling from one crag to another, much faster than he had come up. And in the morning, Carol O'Daly was found lying beside his horse, the bridge of his nose broken, which disfigured him for life, his head all cut and bruised, and both his eyes closed up, and as black as if Sir Daniel Donnelly had painted them for him. Carol O'Daly was never bold again in riding along near the haunts of the fairies after dusk, but small blame to him for that, and if ever he happened to be by night in some lonesome place, he would make the best of his way to the journey's end, without asking questions, or turning to the right or to the left to seek after the good people, or any who kept company with them. I mean, how rude is it to just throw a stone into a place said to be the home of someone else? But I suppose the very beginning showed us that he minded little of manners. Alright. So the next story is called The White Trout, A Legend of Kong by S. Lover. Okay. There seems to be a lot of implied accent within the spelling of the story, so it might take me a second longer to properly read it. There was once upon a time, long ago, a beautiful lady that lived in a castle upon the lake Bant, and they say she was promised to a king's son, and they were to be married, when all of a sudden he was murdered. The creature, Lord help us, and thrown unto the lake above, and so of course he couldn't keep his promise to the fair lady, and more's the pity. Well, the story goes that she went out of her mind, bespoke with losing the king's son, for she was tender-hearted, God help her, like the rest of us, and pined away after him, until at last no one about seen her, good or bad, and the story went that the fairies took her away. Well, sir, in course of time the white trout, God blessed, was seen in the same Bant, and sure the people didn't know what to think of the creature, seeing as how a white trout was never heard of before or since, and years upon years the trout was there, just where you see it is blessed, just where you seen it this blessed minute, longer nor I can tell. And though, as I said before, the accent is very heavily written into this story, and be that the memory of the oldest in the village, at last the people began to think it must be a fairy, for what else could it be? And no hurt nor harm was ever put on the white trout, until some wicked sinners of soldiers come to the parts, and they laughed at all the people, and gibbed and jeered them, for thinking of the likes. And one of them in particular swore he'd catch the trout, and would eat it for his dinner. Well, what would you think of the villainy of the soldier? Sure enough, he caught the trout, and away with him home, and put him in a frying pan, and into it he pitches the purty little thing. The trout squealed all as one as a Christian creature, and oh, well, hello, chirpy birdie. Thank you so much for popping in. And thank you all, everyone coming in. You came at the moment where I am reading an Irish tale. And unfortunately, the accent is very heavily written into the story, so it's taking me a second to properly read it. Oh, the Cry Fang, thank you so much for following. That's so sweet of you. Did you have a wonderful stream, Chirpy Birdie? Were you doing art? Or were you playing... What was it that you've been playing? Fortnite? Hello, Armored Horns. Thank you so much for commenting. Hello, Scully Wolf. Thank you so much for saying hello. As I thank all of you for popping in. Now, where was I in the story? Here we are. The trout squealed, all as one as a Christian creature, and, my dear, you'd think the soldier had split his sides from laughing, for he was a hardened villain, and when he thought one side was done, he turned it over to fry the other, and, what would you think? But the devil a taste for a burn was in it all in all, and sure the soldier thought it was a quarter trout that could not be briled. But, says he, I'll give it another turn by and by, little thinking what was in store for him, the heathen. Well, when he thought the side was done, he turned it again, and lo and behold you, the devil a taste more done than side was nor the other. Bad luck to me, says the soldier. But that baits the world, says he. But I'll try you again, my darling, he says, as cunning as you think yourself. And so with that he turns it over and over, but not a sign of the fire was on the beautiful trouts. Ah, Armored Horns, thank you so much for the follow. Well, says the desperate villain, for sure, sir, only he was a desperate villain entirely. Flying Trolley, thank you so much for the follow. Oh, and thank you so much for the posture check. I'm not wearing my corset today, so thank you for the reminder. For sure, sir, only he was a desperate villain entirely. He might know he was doing a wrong thing, saying that all his endeavors were no good. Well, says he, my jolly little trout, maybe you're fried enough, though you don't seem over well dressed. But you may be better than you look, like a singed cat. And a tidbit after all, says he. And with that he ups with his knife and fork to taste the piece of the trout. But, my jewel, the minute he puts his knife into the fish, there was a murdering screech that you'd think that the life I'd say gave you if you'd heard it. And away jumps the trout out of the frying pan and into the middle of the fire. And the spot where it fell, up rose a lovely lady, the most beautiful creature that eyes had ever seen, dressed in white and a band of gold in her hair, and a stream of blood running down her arm. Look where you cut me, you villain, says she, and she held out her arm to him. And, my dear, you thought the sight I'd have his eyes, the sight would leave his eyes. couldn't you leave me cool and comfortable in the river where you snared me, and not disturb me in my duty?" says she. Well, he trembled like a dog in a wet sack, and at last he stammered out something, and begged for his life, and asked her ladyship pardon, and said he didn't know she was on duty, or he was too good a soldier not to know better, nor to meddle with her. "I was on duty then," said the lady. "I was watching for my true love that is coming by water to me," says she. "And if he comes while I'm away, and that I would have missed him, I'll turn you into a pinking, and I'll hunt you up and down forevermore, while grass grows or water runs." Well, the soldier thought the life would leave him, as the thoughts I've been turned into a piggin, and begged for mercy, and with that says the lady, "Renounce your evil courses," says she, "you villain, or I'll repent it too late. Be a good man for the future, and go to your duty, attendance at the confessional, regular. And now," says she, "take me back and put me into the river again, where you found me." "Oh, my lady," says the soldier, "how could I have the heart to drown a beautiful lady like you?" But before he could say another word, the lady was vanished, and there he saw a little trout on the ground. Well, he put it in a clean plate, and away he runs for the poor life, for fear her lover would come while she was away. And he ran, even till he came to the cave again, and threw the little trout in the river. The minute he did, the water was as red as blood for a little while, by reason of the cut, I suppose, until the rain washed the stain away, and to this day there's a little red mark at this trout's side where it was cut. Well, sir, from that day out the soldier was an altered man, and reformed his ways, and went to his duty regular, and fasted 3 times a week, though it was never fish he took to fasting days, and after the fright he got, fish I'd never rest in his stomach, saving your presence. But anyhow, he was an altered man, as I said before, and in course of time he left the army, and turned hermit at last, and they say he used to pray evermore for the soul of the white trout. Now, in quotations, there is a bit of an explanation for this story. These trout stories are common all over Ireland. Many holy wells are haunted by such blessed trout. There is a trout in a well at the border of Lough Gill, Sligo, and some paganish person put once on the gridiron. It carries the marks to this day. Long ago, the saint who sanctified the well put that trout there. Nowadays, it's only visible to the pious, who have done due penance. Once again, I apologize for my stumbling over some of the words. Some of these stories have a very heavy accent spelled in the way that they go about these things. such as soldier. It is spelt Sojor. So, Sojer, pardon me. And so there are a few things that took me a second to properly put together. Oh, nice shroom. Thank you so much for the hydrate. Oh, it has been going well, Shroom. We just finished one story, and I was apologizing for stumbling over some of the words due to the heavy accent that was spelled out in the words. But let me check the time. Alright, so we have time for one more story. If you don't mind my asking, are you using a voice mod? No, I'm not. Do I sound a bit different? I do have my microphone a little bit further away for the ease of my reading. Is that causing a distortion in my voice? I suppose I should have asked everyone if everything was sounding okay. Don't know how else to describe it, but it sounds like there's a quieter, deeper version of you being overlapped by the real you. Well, that's certainly an interesting way to put it. But no, I have not done anything different. It's appropriate for the themes. Well, thank you, my dear. Although, as I said before, I have not done anything different. And if it truly sounds like my voice, perhaps there is something else going on. Can you still hear it at this time? Or is it gone now? Or is it perhaps the fire that I have playing in the background? I can somewhat hear it. It's nothing major, just curious if it was intentional or not. Well, no, my dear, I have not done anything different. Although, that is an interesting thing that you would bring up something like that. But I suppose I will deal with that in a moment. And if perhaps light some cleansing incenses and brush out things in my doorway if need be. Although I do not feel that there is something else. But the final story I will read to y'all today is called The Farmer Punished by Lady Wild. The fairies, with their free, joyous temperament and love of beauty and luxury, hold in great contempt the minor virtues of thrift and economy, and above all things abhor the close, hard, dastardly nature that spends grudgingly. Ooh, I don't know if I can say that word. I'm gonna swap it with dastardly. Yeah, didn't even realize that. Dastardly nature that spends grudgingly and never gives freely. Indeed, they seem to hold it as their peculiar mission to punish such people and make them suffer for the sins of the hard heart and harsh hand, as may be seen by the following tale. A farmer once lived near the Boyne, B-O-Y-N-E, close to an old churchyard. He was very rich and had crops and cattle, but was so hard and vivacious that the people hated him, for his habit was to get up very early in the morning and go out to the fields to watch that no one took the cabbage or a turnip, or got a cup of milk when the cows were being milked. For the love of God and the saints. Stingy. I suppose I can use that word instead of the other word. One morning, as he was out as usual, by sunrise spying about the place, he heard a child crying bitterly. "Oh, mother, mother, I am hungry. Give me something, or I'll die." "Hush, darling," said the mother. "Though the hunger is on you, wait. For the farmer's cow will be milked presently, and I'll knock down the pail so the milk will be spilt on the ground, and you can drink your fill. For, as all know, the fairies have a right to what is spilt or falls on the ground." When the farmer heard this, he sent a stout man to watch the girl that milked, and to tie the cow's feet that she should not kick, so that time no milk was spilled upon the ground. Next morning he went out again at sunrise, and he heard the child crying more bitterly than ever. "Mother, mother, I'm hungry. Give me something to eat." "Wait, my child," says the mother. "The farmer's maids bake cakes today, and I'll make the dish to fall just as she is carrying them from the griddle, so we shall have plenty to eat this time." Then the farmer went home and locked up the meal, and said, "No cake shall be baked today, not till the night." But the cry of the child was in his ears, and he could not rest. So early in the morning he went out again, and bitter was the cry of the child as he passed the copse. "Mother, mother," it said, "I've have no milk, I've had no cake. Let me lay my head on your breast and die." "Wait," said the mother. "Someone will die before you, my darling. Let the old man look at his son, for he will be killed in battle, before many days are over. And then the curse will be lifted from the poor, and we shall have food in plenty." But the farmer laughed. "There is no war in Ireland now," he said to himself. "How then can my son be killed in battle?" And he went home to his own house, and there in the courtyard was his son cleaning his spear and sharpening his arrows. He was a comely youth, tall and slender as a young oak tree, and his brown hair fell in long curls over his shoulders. "Father," he said, "I am summoned by the king, for he is at war with the other kings. So give me the swiftest horse you have, for I must be off tonight to join the king's men. And see, I have my spears and arrows ready." Now, at that time in Ireland, there were 4 great kings, and each of them had 2 deputies. And the king in Leinster made a great feast for the deputies, and to 7 of them he gave a brooch of gold each, but to the 8th only a brooch of silver, for, he said, "The man is not a prince like the others." Then the 8th deputy grew angry, and he struck the king's page full in the face for handing him the brooch. Poor page. On this all the knights sprang up and drew their swords, and some took one part and some another, and there was such a great fight in the hall. And afterwards the 4 kings quarreled, and the king of Leinster sent out messengers to bid all his people to come to help him. So this farmer's son got the message as well as the others, and he made ready at once to join the battle with a proud heart for the sake of the king and a young man's love of adventure. Then the farmer was filled with rage. "This is the wicked work of the witch woman," he said. "But I would not give her the milk to spill, nor the cakes to be baked, so I will not give her the life of my only son." And he took large stones and built up great walls the height of a man round a hut, and set the great stone at top to close it, leaving only a place for a vessel of food to be handed down. And he placed the lad within the hut. "Now," he said, "the king shall not have him, nor the king's men. He is safe from battle and the spears of the warriors." So the next morning he rose up quite content, and was set out at sunrise as usual. And as he walked by the churchyard, he heard the child laughing, and the mother said, "Child, you laugh by a grave, for the farmer's son will be laid in the ground before 3 days are over, and then the curse will be lifted from the poor. He would not let the milk be spilt, nor the cakes to be baked, but he cannot keep his son from death. The spell on him for evil." Then a voice said, "But his father has walled him round in a hut of strong walls, high as a man. How then can he die in battle?" And the woman answered, I climbed the hut last night and gave him 9 stones, and bade him throw them, one by one, over his left shoulder, and each time a stone of the wall would fall down, till free space was left him to escape, and this he did. And before sunrise this morning he fled away, and has joined the king's army. But his grave is ready, and in 3 days he will be in this ground, for his doom is spoken. When the farmer heard these words, he rushed like mad to the hut, and called his son by name, but no answer came. Then he climbed up and looked through the hole at the top, but no signs of his son were there. And he wrung his hands in despair, and went home and spake no word, but sat moaning with his head buried in his hands. And on the 3rd day he heard the steps of men outside, and he rose up, for he knew they were bearing the body of his dead son to the door. And he went out to meet them, and there lay the corpse of the young man on the pile, pale and beautiful, struck through and through by a spear, even as he had died in battle. And they laid him in the churchyard, just as the witch woman had foretold. And all the while people wept, for the young man was noble to look upon, and of good and upright spirit. But the farmer neither spoke nor wept. His mind was gone, and his heart was broken, and soon he lay down and died, unpitied by all, for he was hard and cruel in his life, and no man wept for him. And all the riches he had gathered by grinding down the poor melted away, and his race perished from the land, and his name was heard of no more, and no blessing rested on his memory. And that, my dears, was the end of that story. As I said earlier in the stream, as pitiful as it sounds, a good way to punish a parent is through their innocent child. But perhaps you shouldn't be so stingy as to allow another's child to die. Quite a terrible man to ignore the cries of a starving child, even one that he did not view as like himself. But, my dears, I will say that that will be the end of today's reading stream. Now, as a reminder, every Mondays on October, they will be Mythic Mondays, where at 5 p.m. CST, I will read to y'all more stories. But on Tuesdays, they will be Toothy Tuesdays, where at 5 p.m. CST, I will play through a horror game for the month of October. And tomorrow, we will play through the game called Unforgiving in Northern Hymn. The game itself is roughly 3 hours long, so I should be able to play through it on stream. It is a wonderful little horror game, the first that I've ever tried to play. And as a disclaimer, I have technically played through this game. But if you want me to play a horror game, you have to settle with the fact that it will be one known to me, as I do not enjoy horror generally. But it is a wonderful little atmospheric horror game that focuses on Norse mythology. So I believe it will be a nice, fitting little story. But until then, let me see if I have a friend still rateable. Hmm. Ah, yes. So, my friend Game Crazy is still going. So, he seems to be playing Castlevania Symphony of the Night, I believe. And so, we will raid him. Let me see if I can properly set this up. Now, my darlings, let us blind and enchant them with our glimmer. Be mindful. Please do be kind. But I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day today. And I hope all of your ventures go by well. Ta-ta!